Our first Fridays this month is media relations during a disaster, and we're going to do something a little bit specific and new that we haven't tried before. But first, I want to do a general introduction of First Fridays for those who might be joining us for the first time. We do this the first Friday of each month, with a few exceptions, just in case. 6 to 7 p.m. Hawaii time. We're doing this on Teams just to make sure because we have people from all across the Pacific Islands region. And I want to make sure that remains open to everyone. Participants, I want all Red Crossers to be here. So anybody that you think can benefit from this, please let them know. If you think that there is something that we should be talking about and something that people should hear, we want to discuss that in a communications focus. And the purpose of all of this is to practice practical media training, just to get at least an introduction on some of these ideas. I want you to be able to network with your fellow communicators. I want you to be aware of what's going on within the communications department. If you hear of something that you would like to be a part of, or if you say, hey, I'm noticing a blind spot, I would love to hear from you. I also want to share and practice any ideas that you have in telling the Red Cross story. And that one is a big factor in this next series of events that we're going to be doing, the upcoming campaign of First Fridays that we'll be getting into. Now, the next I want to talk about is our agenda for this evening. It's a whole lot of me here. And again, I apologize for that. We're going to try and incorporate some more people into this. And we're just using this as a guideline, just so that you know what's going on. We're going to be jumping into the scenario of our larger campaign. And then about halfway through or a little after, I want to turn things over to the group. I want to hear from you. There are a lot of you that have had some amazing experiences with the Red Cross, especially when dealing with media in a disaster scenario. And I would love to take a look at some of your experiences and then get your take on it. From your expertise, what do you think worked well, what didn't, and the like. Then we'll wrap things up. And this might not go all the way till 7 o'clock. It all depends. But we are available for that full time. So if you want to share, I encourage you to do so. Okay, so let's jump into this. Here is our disaster season campaign. For the next few months, July through October, we're going to be going through a disaster in slow motion. That's how we're going to be looking at it. So for July, for tonight, we're going to be looking at a communications setup for a disaster response, roughly 3 to 5 days out from a storm's impact. In August, we're going to be talking about that first 1 to 24 hours after initial landfall. There's a lot of critical actions that need to happen during that time, so that's what we'll be zeroing in on. In September, we're going to talk about the duration of the event. That can encompass a much longer period of time, and it deals mostly with the meat and potatoes of information upkeep. Then in October, the wind down and the aftermath, and how exactly we go about providing the appropriate information that really helps the public in that scenario. So for this first session, 3 to 5 days out, here's how it's going to play out. A storm is on the way. We are in the handful of days leading up to a storm, which is predicted to directly hit your island. And for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to treat it as, yes, the storm will hit. But we're going to proceed in this point as though it's not 100% certain. In other words, real life scenario. Shelter locations are currently being determined and are in the process of opening. However, something important to keep in mind, the full number of needed locations is not yet fully known or determined. Your position during all of this will be as part of the DAT or as a public affairs individual, and I just mean that you have that kind of bend to whatever role it is that you're assigned to. A lot of the times, public affairs will kind of wear two hats. So I just want you to incorporate this because even if none of you are directly assigned as a public affairs volunteer, there are concepts here as far as projection of information that are valuable to know regardless of what your role in a disaster response is. Okay, so we now have this set up in front of us. All of the news stations have switched over into their heavy news rotation. They are telling us that the storm will hit and we are preparing. So everything is underway and everything is getting ready and the assignments are starting to come in. You know what your role is and you have work to do. What are we doing? We're going to prepare. That's kind of what we do here at the Red Cross. So, since we're looking at this from a communications aspect, what we're looking to do is set up a network of people. Information is king in this because, as many of you know from experience, one of the greatest ways to combat that feeling of helplessness that can come across during a disaster response is to have greater information, to know what to do with that, or at least give you the ability to make a decision based on that information. So that's what we're looking to acquire for ourselves and then provide. So here we go. You're going to set up your network of people. And when you're looking for your network of people, the first qualification is find out who you can go to for verified information. You'll see verified there, italicized in red, all of that. So that's an important word. We need to make sure that we remember that. So bear that in mind for an upcoming slide. Who can you go to for verified information? Identify those people and establish communications with them ASAP. Now, this is very important to do, especially in that term ASAP, just because you want to make sure that things are in position now during the setup. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this. You want to make sure that this is all done during the setup because in the thick of the moment, that is not a good time to realize that, oh, I haven't even said hello to this person and I need an introduction, whatever. So here we are. Establish those communications ASAP, however that happens. Go and meet them face to face. If you're in that situation, you have that luxury to do that. If it's an email, that's fine. Great. Phone call, whatever that needs to be. Then set up a time, a personal calendar for you to do check-ins regularly with your network. Now, I've put 2 to 3 times a day here is a good frequency. Depending on your position, that is going to swing wildly. Some people I'll be lucky to talk to people once a day. If that's the case, fine, understandable, do what you can. For others, 2 to 3 times a day is a frequency that will be hit within the first 90 minutes. So just bear in mind that you really need to keep a regular touch point with all of these people. If possible, keep a living document. It is far too easy to forget things. Whatever it is that you've discussed can immediately walk out the other ear as soon as you start talking to somebody else or get assigned a new task, whatever that might be. So a living document is great if you have access to a computer or if you can just bust out your phone, if you've got a smartphone, and just open up the notepad section, type out something really quick. The next thing to keep in mind, become someone else's network. This is a very important aspect because as much as you're looking for people to get all of this verified information from so that you know who you can confidently go to and take their word as having, all of the fact checking done beforehand, you're going to be that to somebody else. That's kind of an intimidating thing to feel at times, but how you do that is making sure that you know your role. And we'll get into more of this later, but it sounds like this grand responsibility, but in practice, it really is what you do already. Knowing what it is that you contribute, what your assignment is to its fullest. That's what it is to be someone else's expert. Then I want you to learn how your role relates to others. Now, again, this is all very generalized. This is going to apply to you regardless of what your role is. But If it is, say, handing out food, you want to know, okay, who is it that I need to speak to? How does what I do impact this person that's farther down the chain? How is it that what I do impacts the person that's farther up the chain? Whatever that might be. Just know where it is and have a good sense of the layout, as we are all looking to figure out whatever a new norm would be in this situation of a disaster response. That is what you need to be focused in on. Now, there's one thing that I want to go into about this that I didn't put up here because I just feel like it's something that we can talk about casually or much more casually, and that is being annoying. This is something that I was very concerned with in any of the disaster responses that I was a part of. And that is, I feel like I'm hassling people. I'm being annoying. And the last thing you want to do is be disruptive to anybody else's process when you're in the middle of a disaster response. So, if that is the case, the only piece of advice that I can give is to get over it. That is, it's a blunt way to put it, but it is the way that needs to be considered. There are times when, yes, you actually might be annoying with how often that you check in. Someone might be at the end of their fuse because they are overloaded. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to do that to someone, someone's going to do it to you. However, in that moment, as we've all experienced, I'm sure, you know that you flat out need that information. What's going to go back and forth, you might be at the end of your patience, but understand that it is what needs to be done and just complete that. Don't let it completely cause a meltdown in your process, but there will be times when it feels like you walk right up to that line. That is just a fact, and with something that we're going to have to deal with. How to avoid that in any other way is quite simply, um, always have something to offer. It greatly decreases people's sense of you're bothering me if you come with something. Now that's just hospitality in any sense, isn't it? Yes. So if you're going to them, again, this circles back to the idea of being an expert in your role. Have some information, offer it up, and get something from them. Request whatever is necessary. Okay. So once you have this network set up, what's going to happen next? Well, there could be a lot of things that happen internally and externally. And there are two very different messages that you'll need to craft once you have those requests come in. An internal an internal request and communication is something that you can be certainly much more casual about, and something that is much more idea based as far as potential. Externally, it is not potentials that you're dealing with at all. Externally, what you should be handing out to people is only, and I do mean only, what is 100% verified and confirmed. And that goes back to me italicizing and putting verified in red. So here we go. Verified information. Know the difference between ideas, rumors, and confirmed details. Ideas could be something along the lines of, well, we're looking into the option of opening 3 more shelters. That is an idea that's out there. A rumor is, oh yeah, I heard that we're opening 3 more shelters. So yeah, like let's start to prepare for that. And then you have the confirmed details. That is when your supervisor, or again, someone who can provide verified information, comes to you and says, here is the address for the other shelter that's opening, and here are 2 more addresses for 2 more shelters. Here are the people that we need, et cetera, et cetera. We need to make sure that internally we can discuss all of that, but always, always, always externally be very clear on confirmed details. When you are speaking internally, again, if you're bouncing around ideas and possibilities, that's fine. That's, it has its moments and it has its needs to do that. If it reaches a point where something has been decided, make sure you note that. The, just to confirm A, B, C, D, E, whatever it might be, just because you need that lock in. Never ever tell the public, and by that I am including the media. So I mean anybody that John Q. Public on the street or a reporter for one of the TV stations. I'll wrap them all up in public. Never tell them anything other than confirmed details, and we'll go into why that is. Because we are not in any way looking to hide details. We really are not. The job of the public is in that moment to make sure that they and their family are going to be okay. You don't want to give them a bunch of additional information that just confuses possibilities. That doesn't help them at all. In fact, it might send them into more of a panic. The news station does not need to know about a lot of potential shelters that are opening up. That doesn't help anyone. That becomes something, since they are looking for coverage of absolutely any aspect of a storm, that'll go out to the public then. And again, that creates more confusion. Also, beyond confusion, it can create misinterpretations and negative opinion. And we do want to avoid that as well. If you say, hey, well, I've heard that we're opening 3 more shelters, and you say that to somebody from the media, and the person from the media turns around and says, well, they're going to be opening 3 more shelters. They don't hear the maybe, we're planning. It's like, they're gonna. It just gets translated. It's a game of telephone. Once that happens, what happens then if it's decided, you know what, we don't need those additional 3 shelters, or that just doesn't go through? Then you've got the media who turns around and says, I thought you were opening 3 more shelters. What's going on? What's the problem? The fact that it isn't delivered on, it's now perceived as a problem. We want to avoid that. And so along with the whole, what's the problem? It becomes, well, we were looking at the attendance at this other shelter, and they're looking pretty full. And we know that there's no shelter in this neighborhood. Is that supposed to be where one of these other 3 shelters were supposed to open? Why isn't that happening? What's going on? It's just more opportunity for confusion, negative information. And that is not what we are looking to do. Another great way to deliver any form of message is to know your role. And I can't say that anymore without hearing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in my head, but know your role. Speak to the expertise of what you are doing or what you have done. And this ties into the idea of you being an expert in your field. So what this is if your job is once again to check people into the shelter, well, then you know what the questions are that are going to be asked. You know what needs to happen, what the requirements are, whatever, absolutely whatever. Speak to that and have that information at the ready, and have that at the ready first, because pertinent information needs to come first. Stories come second. So while you're up there, say, okay, at this shelter where you're working the door, can people bring pets? Yes or no? There you go. That's the extent of the pertinent information. Do people need to bring their own food? Yes or no? Do people need to bring their own blankets, cots, etc., etc.? You have that information. Speak to that knowledge. If you've done something in a different capacity for a different disaster response, you can speak about the nature of that role that you've worked in before. Just don't make any promises based on the current one because specifics will change from disaster to disaster. Stories can then happen second. Stories are the absolute attention getting powerful punches that happen and draw people. However, the media is looking for sound bites. So they want to know first and foremost, the shelter is opening at this location at this time, bring this. That's what they need to know up front. Then you can start getting into a story. If your job is to hand out food, once you've said this is what we're offering, and usually it's snacks, whatever that might be, but you're in a shelter, you can tell a story. If they ask you for, so what's it like? What have you seen working in the shelter here, such and such? That's when you can say, okay, well, the other day or just a few hours ago, whatever it might be, I saw a mom with her kids and I was passing out a sandwich. And it was nice that when I gave them their sandwiches, I saw this look on her face that showed that like it was one less thing that she needed to worry about, if even just for a moment. Where was she going to sleep tonight? She had that thanks to us. What is she going to eat and feed her kids? They have that right now thanks to us. That's what we're here to do. That's the level of like the stories, the things that you have experienced. Please, by all means, share that. But I do need to say that it has to come second. Here is the next big thing. If you're asked a question and you do not know the answer, I hereby give you permission to not know that answer. Don't beat yourself up. It is a horrible feeling that I have experienced far too many times to ever be comfortable with, of someone saying, so tell us about this, or what is the nature of that? And I just don't have that information. That piece of fact just hasn't reached me. I haven't found that verified information, and that is not a time to guess. So I am giving you permission to not know. And the way you go about not knowing is to simply say, I think I can. It's like, pardon me. I'm trying to come up with this in my head as we as we have this conversation, but I think you should talk to so and so. Or I don't have that information on me at the moment, but you know who is the expert on that? So and so. Make sure that you know where to send them. And this ties back into the idea of you having set up your informational network. You should have somebody in mind, even if it's a catch all person. And you know what? That catch all person can be me. Feel free to give my name and contact information. That is totally fine. Whatever it is that you need to do, but always say, here is the plan. Here is the next step. You're moving them forward. So, the organization overall, the Red Cross, is expected to know what is going on and what to do. And as an organization, it does. With the combined resources of everyone involved, it knows what's going on. You as an individual cannot be expected to know all of that. So don't worry. Just find that way to send them on to the next place they need to be. Uh, it really is. It just comes down to that projection of, hey, I'm here to help. I don't have what you need, but I know you need that. Let me get you to where you can get that. It's as simple as that. Now, why we have these guidelines. I said this before, I will keep repeating this forever. It is to minimize confusion. There is a dangerous idea out there or preconceived notion that what we're doing behind the scenes is somehow, the magic trick that we are then trying to keep anyone from looking behind the curtains. Just that whole idea of, oh, we're hiding something from you. That is not the case. We are When we look at an external piece of communication and we only tell them a third of what we actually know, that's because the other two-thirds are what I was mentioning before, ideas and rumors. They don't help the public. They don't help the media. You don't want to be brought into something where it's bad information was given to the media and broadcast out to the public. Wrong address for a shelter, in the sense of like, we're going to open a shelter at this location, but that was just an idea. That was a rumor. That wasn't verified. Suddenly you've got a line of people standing outside of a school gym that's never going to open. And the storm is barreling down. That is not something you ever want to happen. So us not telling and broadcasting an idea or a rumor is a benefit. We are not trying to play, our little 3-card Monty game where we're hiding something and we only want you to see this. We're trying to get you only the information that is useful. Also, it does provide that information faster. If you're cutting through all of this extra, just unnecessary information, then that's what you get. That actually improves our relationship with the media, because again, they're looking for sound bites and information. They don't want to have something. If they turn around and say, oh, they're going to open these 3 shelters, it doesn't matter that you said might. They'll translate it as will, and that's not going to help anybody, because then if those 3 shelters don't open, then they're a little angry at the fact that now you've made them into liars. It doesn't matter that it might be their own fault for misconstruing the information you've given them. That will come back on us. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. So that is what we're looking to do. From a very specific communications point, I'm going to go into that now, just because up until now we've been talking about very generalized ideas. From a very specific communications standpoint, what I'm looking to do in those hours or those days and hours that lead up to the impact of the storm is to get all of the information out as fast as possible, as widely as possible. You will not, if you are ever assigned as a public relations officer, you will never have a problem getting your information to television, radio, newspaper. They will be calling you constantly. This is where you need that living document that I talked about before. Have one that's just purely, these are the ideas, this is what could happen. And then you need that short list of purely just the verified information, so that you never get lost and that you never change the message until the message is ready to be changed. Never unnecessarily waver. Never tell one group, oh yeah, we've done that a couple of times, and the next one, oh yeah, we've done that a handful of times. Whatever that is, any sort of change in the story from one interview to the next will be perceived as a weakness in the armor, for lack of a better term, and that's what they'll zero in on. And again, it's not a negative relationship. It's that when you are at a heightened sense of trying to get information that is absolutely critical to, quite literally, survival in these cases, sometimes, that people will quite simply zero in on a change or a perceived change from one to the next, because consistency and the idea of a strong basis of information is absolutely paramount. Again, that makes people much more calm when they have more information and correct information, verified and complete. So once you definitely have television, newspapers, radio, yes, they're all contacting you, and you try to schedule whatever that might be. Part of your network connections that you needed to build will be experts that are willing to speak to the media. So in my present, or from my perspective, that is me looking to all of you who are out there as part of the debt. If you are the boots on the ground people, if you are aware of how communications is so vitally important, and you've had enough of this training where it's like, I've got an idea of what I need to say, I feel comfortable or confident in saying X, Y, and Z, that's who we need to know. We need to be able to call on you. Because yes, there will always be people that sit at the kind of at the top of the chain to be like, we're trying to organize and we're trying to lead and we're trying to do all of that. Well, that's great. That makes them the ultimate authority. That also makes them really busy, and you cannot hassle them all of the time. Diane's on the call. I have asked her so many times to do so many interviews. Sometimes it's like, let the people who are organizing things do their job. And then that also is true for you. If you're boots on the ground and you're very busy doing that, if you don't have the time, we get it. So we want as many people as possible that are capable of doing these question and answer, speaking to the public, speaking to the media. It creates this wider sense of, again, the Red Cross as an organization is the combined expertise of all of its members, and they know what's going on. They know what to do next. Because if you give people an option, just one step, if you're just like the next step, we might be thinking a dozen steps down the line. Hopefully we are. But if we can tell people just that one next step, that's infinitely valuable. To that end, I know I keep circling back to media types. Another big one is social media nowadays. I don't know how many people out there feel this way, but there is a good, I'd say 75% of the time now, where if I hear anything news related, the first thing I do is I head over to whatever it might be, Facebook, Twitter, any of that, to see if it's coming from multiple different sources and then vetting those sources. I don't want to hear from like my cousin's friend's former roommate that there's a shelter opening. I want to see that that's reported from the Red Cross. I want to see that, the meteorologists from KHON and KITV and Hawaii News Now are all on the same page of we are T-minus 2 days from landfall. I want everybody on the same page. I want to vet all of these sources. Okay. So we need to step into that role. So when we have the address for a shelter that's opening up, get that out there as soon as possible. That all needs to happen on the lead up. This isn't even touchdown of the storm yet. That's next month. We'll get into all of this. This is just the preparation, because once landfall hits, the entirety of this takes on a much different group criteria of information. And we'll go into that next. Right now, I just want to impress the importance of setting up that initial network and making sure that you are prepared in advance of understanding what it is that you can and should say to your coworker versus the public and clientele versus the media. Okay. That was my big, long-winded explanation of all of this. Now I kind of want to turn things over to you. So I'm interested in hearing from people. Many of you have been through disaster responses before, and I would love to hear some stories from you, pardon me. And I would like to know what kind of experiences that you've had. Have you ever spoken to the media? Do you have anything that you've decided, oh, this really helped, or this really didn't? Go ahead and raise your hand. I'll call on anybody I see pop up. Daniel, please.
Hey, how's everybody doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for asking a question. My throat is dry and I need to take a drink of water.
Hey, I thought I'd just give a quick overview on mainly for Guam and for Saipan.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see JD. I didn't see him on here. It's a little different out here in Saipan and Guam. We have Department of Education that runs the shelters.
Right.
We just went through myself, Renice, and then JD. We provided shelter management training to the government of Guam and to the Department of Education 2 weeks ago. We do this annually because although the Department of Education runs the 15 shelters that we have, they go by the Red Cross standards.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, Guam is actually very, very well prepared. We are used to typhoons. I've got about 40 years experience dealing with every typhoon we've had on Guam since 1978.
Oh, wow.
Ambrose has got very extensive experience, and so will do some of our other volunteers. So we're fortunate to have seasoned people as our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than to waste a lot of time, I'd just like to bring out some very important points here. One of them for Guam, the majority of what we do is post-disaster. And for a typhoon, it's mainly related to floods. With that said, as far as our communication goes, Guam, 8.5 miles wide, 32 miles long. We use one voice when communicating to the media here, and that is through our governor's office. It's our emergency area we have set up known as a RAC, the RAC. We communicate with the RAC daily. If there's a fire, a flood, an emergency, if there's a typhoon coming, the RAC puts out the latest on it, and we consider that validated information.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually get a hold of any of the news stations. We just let that be the voice because everything is verified before it goes in there. One important thing I'd like to bring up, and it's a recommendation that I highly advise people to use, is that when there's a disaster, all the phone lines and communications are very busy.
Yep.
People are calling everybody for everything. So what we do on the Red Cross side is we text. It's a lot faster. On the subject on your text, you can put down, I'm okay, this is ready, et cetera, and send it. And it saves a lot of time from trying to dial in or call a lot of people because the communication is so busy. We have, let me see, one thing I'd like to add is there are other, because the Red Cross does a lot for the shelters plus the post-disaster, right? The shelters and stuff, that all comes directly from the governor's office. And we use the Weather Channel, and we attend 2 or 3 times a day. They have weather updates for the local area here that the Red Cross member, 2 or 3 of us dial into just so that we have that information. But
Mm-hmm.
again, that information is also put on the rack, and we use one voice for communicating to the entire island. In preparation for a storm, one of the things we do is we use the FEMA warehouse to store supplies out here. So once we know there is a storm on the way, we do double check with FEMA in the event that we get direction on the post recovery where we might need some of those supplies. And I can't express how so important communication is, as you mentioned quite a few times. But we've got ours mainstream pretty good. We've got our own chat where all of our volunteer members can put in every 6 or 8 hours that they're okay, their family's okay, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason we use that is a lot faster than trying to call and use the phones. Let me see. I covered the weather updated in the briefs. I want to thank the Red Cross in Hawaii for the support that Renice gave us in providing that shelter management. She is We were very, very fortunate, and I think this is the third year that we've been involved putting it on, and it was very well received. I think that those are the key things I wanted to point out now was please use your text if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And communication is so important that, fortunate for us, we have one source, the rack. But as far as talking to the news media, we don't do that. We refer them to the rack.
That
Any
is
questions?
great to know.
Any
Yeah.
questions on that?
I just to throw it out there, you said that texting is the big one. Do you guys use WhatsApp for that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And it
That
worked. I'll tell you what, it works great.
fantastic. I know that is something that we can definitely get into in future exercises or future discussions. But yes, when you're building your network, and thank you for reminding me, this was something that I definitely should have had put in there. And that is when you're building that network, learn the best form of communication, because there are people that do still want the phone call. They do still want the
Absolutely.
email,
Absolutely.
however that it might be. And if it is text, yes, 100%. We also have, I know we have a couple of groups here in Hawaii that they actually prefer to use a Facebook group or a Facebook group text or group chat, anything along those lines. If that's the way that your team functions best, fantastic, do that. But when you're building that initial network, get on the same page. I love the idea. The rack, that's beautiful. I love that. When I'm talking about creating a living document, that is that's my version of that. Something similar where it's since we're not quite as streamlined here, that's what I'm looking to do. I'm creating that constant guideline, that living Bible, for lack of a better term, that is always going to be your go-to resource. And so thank you for that, Daniel. I appreciate it.
All right. The last thing I have is we do have to provide a lot of updates and things like that to the
Hmm.
region Hawaii. And as such, that's either Cheetah Blaze or Ambrose Constantino that provide that. We provide the input into them, they provide it up. That way,
Yes.
everything is validated and verified because they need to know what's going on down there, so that in the event they have to get ready to make long-term decisions to get us additional support.
Yep. That is a part of the whole idea of knowing your role and understanding how what you do impacts the greater picture. Because yes,
Absolutely.
knowing how it moves up the chain to get information to the right people and verifying that information, perfect. Yes.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any experience with?
Aloha.
Hi.
This is Karen. I'm on the
Hi,
Big Island.
Karen.
I just wanted to add that I've been in many of the deployments. I don't do local DAT for fires and things like that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
on the Big Island, and I don't drive after dark because our roads don't have lights. So I'm not a fire person.
Right.
But I do belong to another Red Cross group that's for disability integration.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a sizable number of people across the nation that have specialties in accommodating and making sure that shelters are accessible. So when
Mm-hmm.
you start looking for shelters and planning things, you always have to keep in mind that there will be people coming in who have machines to sleep with. They have oxygen. They have wheelchairs. There has to be space, and they have to be able to get in and out of the bathroom. All of these things. But I just wanted to make mention that that is a whole nother arena when it comes to planning for shelters. And the other thing is there's two kinds of sheltering, right? One is for short term, like
Mm-hmm.
just do a quick evacuation and then you can go home. And then the others are more long term, like how we had with the lava flow over here, where you have a lot of, you have one shelter just for pets, because it's such a large number of people coming in and out. But it's just been a rewarding experience for me. I was in Saipan for Super Typhoon Yutu, and I was in American Samoa. And another comment about the sheltering is culturally, when we were in American Samoa and Saipan, their shelters are in their churches. They're not in the schools or, large arenas like you might find, because maybe there's a lack of cots. I'm not sure, but culturally, they all bring their mats and they're very comfortable in their churches. So, you have to have a little bit of a culture uh, input to how these shelters will be setting up, and when you start looking for spots, and that becomes one of a bit of a challenge when you have um, people with disabilities coming in to a church or to a building that's never been used as a shelter before. So that's all I want to say. I just want to say aloha to everybody from the Big Island, and thank you for the information.
Thank you for the information, because that is an excellent series of points, and I'm glad you brought up, because it's something that we will be touching on more as this campaign goes along. But yes, that idea of, again, from a communication standpoint, welcoming all of these people, making sure that they know they can find refuge with us, and that it's not going to be an even greater hassle than it needs to be, that
And
we
one
are
more
there
thing,
working to put.
when we were in Saipan,
Mm-hmm.
there was a communication breakdown because we were so busy trying to get money, little cards to the people, because there was nothing we could offer. It was so devastated
Mm-hmm.
that the people found out we were going to be like doing case management in one site, and so the radio put it down, and they didn't say tomorrow we'll be at another site, and after that we'll be at another site, because what happened is people rushed. They thought that was going to be the only site they had, and people were there from like 3 in the morning in the rain all day. We were taking water bottles to them out there because we were having challenges with getting our Wi-Fi going for case management, and all of these technical stuff that had to go on, and we had to have the surveyors there to confirm the damage on their property. But it really got to be a problem when people were in line who could have gone to the one the day after because it was closer to their house, or the day after that one because it would even be closer to their house. We're not going to run out of money, but these people were standing in line from early before sunrise till we closed at dark, and then we had to send them home. And then about the second or third day, they were starting to tell the people they're going to be setting up at another location, on this day or that day. So stay home, because it's hard to travel around in this kind of disaster. But that was a really important communication example to what they were talking about, because being clear to the media was all we had. Everything else was down. So
Mm-hmm.
and it took us a while to figure out where we're going to go tomorrow, and we're all planning this, but it's so important to give out as much information so everybody doesn't just stampede in one location
Yes.
when they could have come tomorrow, and they wouldn't have to bring Auntie in the wheelchair today
Yeah.
across the island. So just communication is a real important thing that I wanted to just point out too.
That's fantastic. Yes, it is. It is unavoidable. I mean, I hate saying this, but it is unavoidable. There will be communication breakdowns from time to
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, there, it never, as much as we get close to it and try for it, an absolutely perfect response just does not happen nearly as much as we need it to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking for is just those moments again where we do as much as we can to avoid such a breakdown. And thank you. That's a fantastic example in that idea of verified information, but it wasn't complete. The idea
Yeah.
there is more to
And
this.
it should have been taken maybe a step further to the
Mhm.
police department so they could tell people that were standing in line all night that, just to let them know. It goes a little further than just the radio because half the people don't have a radio working. So you have
Yeah.
to keep all that in mind. But thank you for your information. It's great to be part of the group.
Thank you for your information. I love knowing more about the idea of helping out disabled people and everybody with different access needs, because again, that messaging is absolutely critical from a purely communication standpoint.
Mhm.
Again, just like I don't want that, the auntie in the wheelchair that they brought out to stand there. I don't want her wondering, am I going to be able to get in to
Right.
a shelter? I,
Right.
if we have, I know we're still in it, but we have just been hit with the whole idea and the massive shift from COVID of like, what
Mhm.
if I'm showing symptoms? What if I'm testing positive? Am I just going to get turned out into the wind and rain?
Mhm. Mhm.
No, we
Mhm.
have to make sure that accommodation is handled on the response end of thing, but also that message of we're still going to help you. That
Mhm.
has to get out
Mhm.
there as well. So thank you for bringing up that point. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. If I can be of any help in the future, just contact me. Thank you.
I will be doing that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
How about anybody else? Does anybody else have any stories, experiences that they'd like to share? Well, all right. I'm not gonna force anybody to come on camera and say anything. That happens next time. No, I'm kidding. So we are going to be going through this campaign, like I said, for the next few months. Through October is when I have this planned. And next month, we'll be focusing in on that first 24-hour window after landfall. This is, again, where everything just kicks into high gear, and we'll have plenty to go over for what is really just such a small window of time. We'll have stuff to talk about. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Karen, for your input today. And for everybody who is going to be here next time, which is, I hope, all of you, please feel free to bring any stories, anything that you would like to discuss further, even if I don't have any experience, but I do have questions. Uh, Diane saying happy 4th of July to everybody. So, yes, happy 4th. And let's see, I do want to just once again remind everyone, please don't forget to log your hours for this. If you have any subjects that you want to bring up, please, by all means, feel free to email myself or Kyoka. She is my volunteer engagement lead, and we will work to make sure that your questions get addressed. Or if you have a full presentation idea, we'll work with you so that that spotlight happens. So we will see you next time on August 5th, talking about that first 24 hours in disaster communications response. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy your long weekend. And hey, we came in 3 minutes under the hour mark. So congratulations, everybody. I'll give you back more of your weekend.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, everyone. Mahalo.